been more than 30 years since the time I first read The Killer Angels till now, when we're about to release the extended Directors Cut of Gods and Generals. And I think in the long conversations I've had over the years with Ted Turner, in honoring the soldiers as much as we have, unquestionably, in really trying to understand what motivated them and giving them their full-throated reasons for fighting in the war, in approaching the material that way, what we're then left with is the ultimate horror of war. That even very good people, even very highly motivated and ethical people, can find themselves in the abyss.
As well, that war is so terrible, but we should grow too fond of it.
Well, looking back from the perspective of 72 years, my interest in history goes back to when I was a little boy, and I couldn't read enough about it, and I was just imbued with the whole thing from a very early age. And the history fascinated me, and particularly the history of the Civil War, because growing up in the South, it was just all around us. And in fact, they were still veterans when I was born in 1938. They were still, some of the veterans of the Civil War were still alive. I'm very, very proud and happy to have been associated with the making of these two films. And particularly, I'm not sure they would have been made without my decision and financial backing for them.
One of the nice things working with Ted now over two big movies over many years is, we could discuss anything. Well, back in '02, we shot about a 230-page script. So we knew we were going to have a film of epic proportions. And when we cut it together, it was about 5 hours. We had to cut it down for theatrical release, and we released 3 hours and 40 minutes. That plus an intermission made it a 4-hour experience. Well, in this version, we've restored the hour that we had to take out. So this version is now 4 hours and 40 minutes. And we divided it into 5 parts to make it, to suggest how the viewer could look at it. But of course, if you're a hardcore Civil War enthusiast, you might just hunker down and watch the whole 4 hours and 40 minutes without stopping. What's new in this version? Well, the entire lead up and to the Battle of Antietam and the Battle of Antietam itself.
The Army is spreading out in front of us, a couple of miles up. The enemy is dug in behind a small creek, the Antietam Creek, just this side of Sharpsburg.
We follow the 20th Maine as they move from Maine down to Maryland and maneuver into positions where they would meet the Confederate Army at Sharpsburg and the Battle of Antietam.
We must hold this ridge. We must.
Yes, sir. We'll do our best, sir.
It has the Battle of Antietam in it, which was the largest single-day casualties that ever occurred in the war. More Americans died that day than died in any single day, although the Gettysburg toll was greater over a 3-day period. And I remember when we did see it, I guess it's close to 10 years ago now, I remember the cornfield and it getting mowed down coming through the corn.
Another sequence that's entirely new in this version is a subplot concerning the Shakespearean actor John Wilkes Booth, whom, as everyone knows, was the assassin of President Abraham Lincoln.
What better role than a soldier's in defense of his home, his honor, and his beloved?
So it is fascinating that on the very day of Antietam, when we lost 20,000 Americans combined dead from the Confederate and Federal armies, he was on a stage in Chicago speaking the words of Shakespeare in the role of Hamlet.
While to my shame I see the imminent death of 20,000 men, that for a fantasy and trick of fame go to their graves like beds, fight for a plot.
Powerful commentary from a poet speaking 500 years before on an event taking place that very day. Another thing that's different in the extended version is that there's much more camp life. We spend more time with Thomas Jonathan Jackson and his aides de camp, the kind of behind the scenes camp life, and more time with Adelbert Ames, Joshua Chamberlain, Tom Chamberlain, his brother, in the federal camp, and we get to know these men a little better when they're not leading charges, when they're not in the thick of the fight, how they are in camp life, preparing for battle.
Well, best eat up, Sergeant. We're moving out.
Another area have to do with all the other scenes that were in the original movie, insofar as there might have been a moment here that was cut out, a moment there that was cut out when we had to tighten the film down for theatrical release. So those moments have been restored. And in some cases they're small, but nevertheless dramatically significant. There's a scene early in the film when Thomas Jonathan Jackson has to choose a horse. And he's in the corral at Harper's Ferry, where the Confederate Army has just hijacked a train that was on its way to Washington, filled with livestock, cattle, horses. And it's in that scene when Jackson finds the horse that he will ride for the rest of the war, Little Sorrel.
Shall I arrange for the purchase?
Leave the bill of the sale at my headquarters.
The Confederate Treasury is honored, sir.
And there are moments like that all through the film, which are maybe not whole sequences the way that Antietam is, but restored to the film, they bring the film back to the film that we originally scripted, shot, and intended on making, which fleshes out the more complete story of Jackson and Lee on one side and Joshua Chamberlain on the other. I'm often asked about who I prefer playing Robert E. Lee, Martin Sheen, who played the role in Gettysburg, or Robert Duvall, who played the role in Gods and Generals. An actor brings their own humanity, their own individuality, their own craft, skill, and talent to the role. So both are valid, and I enjoy watching both, and I admire both. So if I'm asked who I prefer, my preference is both.
Well, I thought they did a great job, and particularly with Robert E. Lee's character was very important.
Summon General Longstreet. I want to know what's down below us here, and I do not wish to wait for the fog to lift.
Both Gettysburg and Gods and Generals were thoroughly researched. We wanted to get the facts right. We didn't want to make up things that didn't happen or not get right things which did happen. But having said that, nevertheless, we must confess that a movie is ultimately a work of the imagination. It is not a documentary film. But the act of the imagination, nevertheless, has to be founded on truth to the extent possible.
Well, we went to the maximum extremes to make sure that the movies were as historically accurate as we possibly could make them. And that way they have the greatest long-term value, too, to the populace at large, because if they were going to be historically accurate as we made them, they have value in schools as part of the educational system.
At some point in your experience as an American, you're drawn to this epochal event in the 1860s, which largely defines us perhaps more than any other single historic event of our history. This is not a fantasy movie. This is not escapism. This is the real thing. These events really happened. These people really lived. So there is and there was a great sense of innate responsibility that we had, that Ted had, that I had, that everyone on the crew had, that the actors had, to get it right, to be responsible.
We owe you Texas boys a debt of gratitude for putting on these shows.
Well, I really enjoyed being involved, even in the production, just a little bit, and having my cameo appearances, being able to meet the other actors that were so enthusiastic about playing these roles. Everybody that was involved with the making of this movie, it wasn't just a job, it was a labor of love, and I could see that by having been on the set and spending several days there. It was one of the high points of my life to see so many enthusiastic people busting their chops to make the best movie that we possibly could make.